Hey, it's Russ, and today I'm going to be talking about the unusual and strange things that I've sold on eBay over the last 90 days. So these are going to be the 10 strangest and unusual items I've sold on eBay, and I've got a few bonus items to kind of tell you or advise you about things to look for or opportunities you have out there to sell items that you may not be able to donate to someone like the thrift shop to sell, or you don't plan on using, but sometimes you can find a new home for them via eBay and selling them. So with that in mind, I'll try to make this quick today. I have a history of going long, so I apologize, but let's go through this list. So the first item, an HBO 1990 program guide. So when HBO came out in the 80s or late 70s, you always got a program guide was mailed to you, and it showed the schedule for the entire month, plus it highlighted key movies and maybe had some information. People buy these based upon either they love a certain movie, or there might be a description, or they just collect them. So I think that went for somewhere between $8 to $10. I see that they sell, and so I listed it. The next one is a product packaging, and I tend to sell some of these if there's an older product package to prop houses in California for the movies and film. However, this one went to an attorney in California, but it wasn't a prop house. It was an unused, flat Dunkin' Donuts Christmas box from the early 2000s. I think it might have actually been 2000. And again, I'm not sure what the reason is. It makes sense for a movie if you're doing a period piece, but or I guess if you're a big fan of Dunkin' Donuts. And that's sold for, I think, around $20. So if you have old product packaging that someone has saved in your house, you might want to check to see if it's worth something. I mean, not many are, but occasionally you do run across some that are. The next was a giveaway from a store. So in the 1980s, there was Fashion Bug. And I guess one of the giveaways that they did was a pocket mirror. Now this was like a 2x2 mirror that was a freebie. And maybe you got it with purchase, or maybe it was just like a back to school item. But I ended up selling that for like between $6 and $8. And it only took me a few minutes to list, and I was trying to move things on because I didn't think it would be worth anything in the thrift store. And I didn't want to throw it in the trash because I hate throwing things in the trash. So if I can move it on to somebody who wants it, I'm always going to try and do that first. Speaking of more product packaging, and I'm not always sure why my dad saved these things, other than the fact that he liked Rachael Ray. He enjoyed watching her show, so he saved the Ritz Cracker Rachael Ray box that had a recipe on the back. Maybe he wanted to do the recipe, but it was stored with other Ritz Cracker boxes, which he saved. And I think I got $10 to $12 for a Ritz Cracker box, plus shipping. Everything I add shipping to. So, and this was in 2007. So there is an interest in these older boxes, but it also depends on who was on the box. So what I have found is if you have Pokemon or SpongeBob items, you might want to check out to see if they're worth anything, because they tend to have above average value, and sometimes superheroes that have remained popular. More product packaging, a 1980s Skippy jar, a glass container. It sold for, I think that was $16 plus shipping. People have nostalgia, and people have what they want to buy back sometimes is their childhood. And if they remember the Skippy jar, they like to have it on the shelf and put things in it. And just as a reminder, it's a comfort. I've seen this happen. This happened with my dad. It's why he saved so many different things. Another item that came from a pass down was a 1960s Pico Pay, I think that's pronounced right, toothbrush. Now this came out of I'm pretty sure it came out of my grandma and grandpa's house after they passed, to my dad in a box, stored in the box, and then I found it going through things. The item was new, but the box was damaged that it was in, and I think I got $6 to $10 for it. The next one this was probably the most fun item that I've found. It was a little plaque with a horse on that said, "I'm too hot to trot." Now this was a saying that became popular in the mid-1970s, and I remember it because I was a kid, and it's a little yellow plaque, and I was like, I don't know how to list this. So I thought about who would be the person to give this, and all I could think of was someone giving it to someone that they consider a cougar or a sexy grandma because of the age, and this would be a gag gift. So I wrote that in the description, and it helped it sell. I sold it within 3 days for $10 to $12. It's crazy what sells sometimes. The next was a 1960s Heller fruit drop can. Now, when I found this, I wasn't really sure if it would sell, but after doing this, it had such a cool look, and the colors were these metallic colors, and the candy is very reminiscent of childhood and fond memories, because my grandparents had these. Now, I did not have the lid for this item, and it wasn't in the greatest shape, but I was able to get $8 to $12 for it. And then this next one is a perfect example of not having an entire or complete item. I sold a solo water cooler, a metal cup dispenser that goes on the side of the water cooler. These were popular in the 1970s and the 1980s and maybe even the 1990s, but they moved to where I think a lot of cases they converted over to plastic, or they just got rid of these sleeves, even though they sell the cups still. So I didn't know if it would sell. I listed it and it did. And I think I got $18 to $24 for it. But it shows you don't have to have the full item. You may want to see if something can be sold as a part rather than the whole, because if things get damaged or get lost, you can sell something for a little bit more value because it helps complete something, or somebody might have a project. So always keep that in mind. The last one of the 10, before I get to the bonus items, is, and this is more just a cool story. I often sell, I have a couple, probably about 100, 150 print ads listed on the site. And the one was, on one side it was Modesse, which is a woman's product from the 50s, and the woman's in a very elegant dress. And on the back side was an ivory soap print ad from 1959. And it turned out that the woman who bought this is great, it was her sister that was the baby on the ad. And she bought it as a gift to give to her sister, who was turning 65, I think. Yeah. So it's kind of sometimes, and she was so thankful that she had found the ad. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool that her sister was doing that. Now these bonus ones are kind of just fun things, but also informative to give you little tidbits on things that do sell. So going back to the having a part rather than the whole, my friend made his own computer, and he decided to use a unique cooling system rather than the one that came with the chip to install in his computer. So the fan was left unused, and I was helping him organize stuff last weekend, and he's like, well, I'm never going to use the fan because the cooling solution I have in there works fine and I don't need it. So I'm like, do you want me to give it a shot to sell it on eBay? So I took it, listed it last weekend, and or maybe it was Monday, just the other day. And it turns out I had the original box, the original fan, and the original packaging, never been used. it sold within 2 days. So know that parts sometimes can be worth money on their own. It's just whether the value is there for you to follow up and list it based upon your time. Another cool thing that we had that I sold was a flocked black cat from the 1970s. This was a decoration we hung up on the walls when we were kids and bought it like the local Ben Franklin or Five and Dime or Wars. And flocked means that it has that light felt on it. And these retro Halloween and retro Christmas decorations that you don't use, never plan to use, and just sit there, and you're thinking, should I just throw them in the trash? I'd say, don't do it. Don't do it. Take the time and look up whether or not they have value. And if you want to try and sell them, do, because you're likely to sell them. It's just what the price point. I think I sold it for $18 to $22. The next thing was, and this was kind of cool to find, and I don't even know where it came from. It was a 1936 Charming Small Homes brochure. This is great because I've actually seen homes like this in my neighborhood from the 1930s. And what I don't know is whether or not this book was to sell the plans for the home or actually to sell the home, or whether this was a development. So this was before suburbia happened and people would build these homes, but I just don't know. It didn't list a builder, but it was so cool because all the homes were between like 1,100 and 1,400, maybe 1,600 square feet at the largest size. And a lot, they're just really cool. Just so reminiscent of what you think of from the 30s, small and joyful homes. The next thing was another item from going back 70 years. From the 1950s, it was a Good Housekeeping petticoat sewing brochure. So sometimes if you have something that teaches you how to do a craft or skill that is no longer available, sometimes costume designers are looking for these things so they can make petticoats to use in the theater. But it's kind of cool because you're keeping the history of something alive and that person's able to use it. And then the last thing, which I still have, which my dad, being an art teacher, he often had a lot of things that he didn't use but purchased. And I found a stash of fluorescent Crayola crayons from the 1990s. New in box, never used. I think he might have bought them for the grandkids, but he never gave them to the grandkids. So I've listed them. I've sold a few. I have a few more left. And one thing to know is that sometimes these Crayola crayons are worth something. So check out, especially like scented ones, old scented Crayola crayons go for good money. And the reminder is, sometimes I always say, look it up to see if it might be valuable rather than just throwing it in the trash, because you never know. While none of these were like $100 items, the fact is I was able to move them on and sell them. And I've got, if you want to see my shop, check out my eBay store. The link is below. And I've got all sorts of things. Vintage clothes, vintage prints, and you'll see things from across the board. But keep in mind, things sell on eBay that you don't think will sell anywhere else. And it's fun to see what does sell. It's disappointing to see when you have something you think will sell and it doesn't sell. But I'm going to try and do this like every 2 months or 3 months, or, you know, to try and let you know what's happening and just some fun things that I've sold and discovered. And thanks for watching, and subscribe below as I'll be doing obviously more videos here and there. And thanks for watching. Take care.